folks, and welcome into our continuing preseason coverage here in the Midstate 48. Chris Brooks here with you again as usual. Going to bring on the guys with me this time, Scott Burton and Cameron Reed. Unfortunately, no Tom Duggan in this episode. He actually had something he had to take care of, so we'll see him hopefully back in week one. Scott, Cam, how you doing?
Doing well.
Doing really well. Excited to break down our biggest area of coverage here in 6A.
Yeah, 6A with 26 teams in our coverage area. A lot of intriguing stories with a lot of these teams, over 5 different regions. It's a lot to get to as far as those teams are concerned. Before we do, guys, obviously we want to thank our sponsors, Miracle Auto Group, for sponsoring Midstate 48 this year. Big get for those with the Galvin family over there in Gallatin, Tennessee. Certainly want to thank them for their sponsorship, and hopefully you guys will enjoy what we've got for you coming up in 2022. 6A has been kind of predictable as far as who ends up in the championship game the last half decade at least. With Oakland, Maryville. I mean, sometimes it's a Williamson County team on the other side, but between Oakland and Maryville, we can pencil somebody in basically right away.
And I don't think anything changes this year. Oakland lost a little bit last year, losing both Jordan James and Isaiah Horton, but they returned pretty much the whole offensive line, and they returned some guys that were behind those guys that could have started anywhere else in 6A football.
Yeah, and then Antonio Patterson as well. I mean, that they had that two-pronged attack in the backfield that was really something special back there that they had, very versatile. But I agree with you, Cam. I think that the old adage that Oakland doesn't rebuild, they reload, certainly applies with that program.
Yeah, the big target on Oakland's back, and a lot of teams going to be shooting for that. We'll talk about some of those potential contenders here in a bit. The way this classification is shaken out with 5 different regions, and Lebanon pretty much in the region by themselves with 4 other teams out of our coverage area. They're one of those teams that we have to kind of look at for 2022 as a potential contender as well, given their success in 21.
Not only their success, but their talent level. Jalen Abston and Crowell, both there at Lebanon, are really great athletes. Causes a lot of problems for defenses as Abston plays quarterback there for him, and he's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the state. So Lebanon has to be excited, building momentum off of their appearance last year in the playoffs before being put out by Oakland ultimately in a game that they kept close for a while until the second half, and then Oakland pulled away. And I believe they won that game like 31-13 or something like that.
I think this is this region from top to bottom is probably the most competitive, or this class is probably the most competitive class out there. I mean, you could look at, especially in our area, regions 4, 5, 6, and 7, and point to one team that could make a run, could make things interesting. I think that that being said, I mean, yeah, Oakland is still, the king until somebody knocks them off, but there are a lot of contenders out there.
And we'll get into a lot of those storylines and some of those teams after in the next segment. But first off, we want to talk about something else that's new for 2022. And I guess not really necessarily new, but it's something that everybody's going to experience is Thursday night football in the Midstate. It's typically more prevalent in Memphis and in Knoxville, not really in the Nashville area. But this year, with the referee shortage, the TSSAA has asked teams to play more on Thursday nights, or they've simply assigned games to Thursday themselves. And some of those games, and we're going to go ahead and bring this up right here. Thursday night, there's a game in the area every Thursday night this season. So I want to kind of go down some of these games real quick, guys. Starting basically in week 1, Cane Ridge and Pearl Cone, they opened the season on Thursday night last year. They'll do it again in 2022. Hendersonville and Oakland also in week 1 on Thursday night.
Yeah, I believe we will have both these games covered by 615 Preps.
Yeah.
Big test early for Pearl Cone and Cane Ridge. Cane Ridge having problems last year, really getting out of the gate early on in games, falling behind in some games, and then not being able to make the complete comeback. It's a big test for both of those there in that week 1 matchup. And then Hendersonville lost Ellis last year. Big test for them going on the road against the juggernaut that we know Oakland is.
Well, and Chris, we talked about this last year about what was coming with the referee issue, the abuse that they were having to take, the fact that you know you have to have a special kind of fortitude to put those stripes on and go out there every game and basically be the most hated person on the field. I mean, essentially, you're like. It's kind of like the police. You, everybody loves them until they come after you. you know, and that's we knew that it was eventually going to cause a problem, and this is the result.
Yep.
For us, it's a great thing because we get to cover more ball, we get to watch more ball. But I'm afraid that it's indicative of another trend that it's not going to correct itself until there's some better policing in the by the programs themselves or the schools themselves until we make it a safe space for referees and they don't. I mean, let the coaches work the referees. You cheer, let the coaches work the referees, and then and because quite frankly, I mean, think about it. Would you want to do it? Would you want your kids doing it? I mean, the way that people talk these days.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring up. I mean, yeah, this problem hasn't gone away. I mean, the treatment of officials is as bad as I've ever seen it. And
that is true. Another thing that we are also forgetting a little bit is the official pay. The pay can be improved a little by TSSAA and the schools that host, because ultimately that comes from the school that hosts the game. They can improve the pay, and I believe that will help a little bit with that indifference with officials not wanting to ref because of the hostile environments that they're in. These officials are asked to travel every 15 weeks out of the year. They're assigned one area, but that area can be as wide as someone living in Smith County and having to drive to Clarksville, more than half the season to go call high school football games, and they're not paid adequately enough to make it worth their while.
Yeah, and we feel a fuel crunch, chasing games, ourselves. I can't imagine to make that drive. I know ref I used to know. Well, I still know him. I just hadn't talked to him in a long time. But he lived in Clarksville, and I watched him ref a game in Greenbrier, which is it's still a significant run. And if you're having to do that 2 days a week,
right, yeah, it's a big issue, and it's one of the reasons why we're seeing these Thursday night games. So let's kind of look down the schedule just real quick. We talked about week 1, week 2. Greenbrier at White House, a pretty good one. Scott, I think we're planning for you to be there because I will be out of town in week number 2 for family engagement. So you're going to have the reins for that week.
Oh boy, responsibility. Thanks.
Yeah, hey, there you
it's
go.
not my strong point.
And you got BGA, Ravenwood, and Smyrna and Rockville. Some pretty good games there in week 2 on Thursday night. There's some good ones down the schedule this year. So, these aren't just throwaway games.
No, and I hope that the stands can fill for these. I mean, I know it gets difficult it's not going to be a weekend night. So hopefully, it gives people the opportunity to go to one game and then maybe turn around and go to another one the next night.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're going to be there week 3. That's our spotlight game,
right?
Macon County and DeKalb.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you'll be at that one. That's wow, week 3, and you get a game of that importance, that magnitude on a Thursday night.
You look at that Watertown Westmoreland game too, Cam. I know you've talked about that game several times in this offseason. That's one that you're looking at.
Yes, I will be in attendance for that game. Super excited in a matchup that should decide Region 4 2A, in my opinion. Then you go ahead into the week 4 Thursday night games. Two new head coaches, both at Pope Prep and Independence, battling it out there in week 4. And what should be, very well could be the first one to 35 or 42 wins that one, as both teams have juggernaut offenses in that matchup.
Yeah, and it's CPA NBA game too. That's a great Thursday night of football, even if it was just those two games by themselves.
Right.
And then you throw in Springfield at Wilson Central. Good matchup for those two teams as well. Keeping on down the schedule, week 5 you get Joe Burns getting the Thursday nighter at Clay County. That's a key region game for them. So
winner gets second place more than likely there in Region 4 1A.
Yeah. And like a lot of these games, some of these are not reserved to non-region games. I mean, there are some region games on this schedule. So some coaches were concerned about that, given they're gonna have an extra day to prepare for a team, having to have a short week.
Well, that Summit Beach game, that could really be a really good game there.
It could be. Both teams taking steps back from being state contenders. Not saying that they're going to be bad. I look for both of those teams still to probably make the playoffs this year. But both of them should take a little bit of a step back. Beach suffering from losing quite a bit of the coaching staff, leaving and taking new positions at other schools. Summit trying to replace, 3 guys that are at your school, Scott, up there at the University of Kentucky.
That's right.
That week 7 game, Station Camp in Mount Juliet. I mean, Scott, you were there last year for that one. That game was a barn burner on Thursday night, and it kind of solidified Station Camp as being one of those contenders in 5A, and kind of started Mount Juliet's tailspin at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's exactly right, Chris. I mean, you came into that game. That was the game that kind of legitimized the season the Station Camp was having. At the same time, it's the game that really put the Golden Bears in the tailspin, and that they never really recovered from. It was a great game at Station Camp, great atmosphere. It's going to be really interesting to see what the atmosphere is in Mount Juliet as they get a chance for revenge.
And speaking of the Golden Bears, they've got 3 straight Thursday night games when you consider week 7, week 8, and week 9.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they're all big games. You have a big region matchup there with Station Camp in week 7. And as you were saying, Scott, what probably will be a pretty big quotable revenge game for Mount Juliet, trying to prove that they are in the upper echelon of that region. And then you have the battle of Wilson County pretty much with Mount Juliet and Lebanon there in week 8. Both teams right at the top of their classifications, both probably top 10 teams, both Mount Juliet in 5A and Lebanon in 6A.
Yep.
Yeah, that was one schedule quirk that I happened to just catch on to there. But I think Mount Juliet's 3rd game, I think maybe Republic is that 3rd game on week 9. So not really get a little bit of relief in the schedule there. Right. But week 9 has Laverne and Overton and a couple of teams that we'll talk about in the 6A spot here in just a minute.
And I'm excited about that week 10 matchup there with 2 teams that historically are pretty good in Brentwood Academy and Ainsworth, both looking to take big steps back into contention as far as state title picture this season.
Yeah, and that being a region game as well in week 10.
Right.
I mean, that's a critical game for both teams. Speaking of those, like week 11, playoff seeding on the line in week 11, Fayetteville at Eagleville, Middle Tennessee Christian at Friendship Christian. That could be for region title on Thursday night.
I was going to say, Chris, that looks to be, if things go the way that they look, that could be right there for the region title. And I think that, and Friendship will have last year on their mind, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I will go ahead and say if everything goes as we expect it to, we will have someone in attendance for that game.
I mean, that's a pretty safe call because we're going to try to cover as many Thursday night games as possible too. I mean, that was one thing with the schedule that kind of stood out. Cannon County, Giles County game too. I mean, that was for a region title last year, so not one to sleep on. This hopefully Cannon County can make a little bit more of a surge even after a good year last year. So, got to be some interesting games.
There's going to be definitely some must see. I would say must see TV, but must see games on Thursday nights.
Yeah, I don't think we can say that without having to pay somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but speaking of paying somebody, we need to pay some bills as well. So let's hear from our sponsor for the Midstate 48, Miracle Auto Group.
Hi everyone, Jim Galvin, Miracle Ford, your Ford dealer in Gallatin, Tennessee since 1980. Great news, beginning now. When you need service, we can come to you.
Our mobile service van comes to you wherever you are, whether you need oil changes, lube, routine maintenance, warranty, filters, wiper blades, batteries, bulbs, recalls, and more.
Visit our website
or call us now.
Are you ready for a miracle?
And I guarantee you those three guys got that in quicker takes than I've ever done a Coaches and Q intro.
I didn't say it. You did.
Oh, I know, but I know the way you think.
You're
sitting
right.
Sitting outside of the barbecue restaurant down on 12th Avenue. Was it Edley's?
Yeah, I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there, whole sidewalk full of people, and I'm sitting there flubbing line after line after line. Those guys are naturals. I'm probably going to be in trouble.
Well, let's dive into 6A because as many teams as we have, we got to get right to it. Starting in Region 3 with Lebanon. Lebanon dominated this region last year, and I'm going to pull these standings from 2021 up. Lebanon finished 11-2, and swept the region games 4-0 there. Quarterfinal appearance, as Cam mentioned, against Oakland. They knocked off Riverdale in round 2, which kind of raised some eyebrows about this Lebanon team. But there were signs that the Blue Devils early on last year were going to be pretty good and will be good again in 2022.
Yes, I look for them to be the class of this region again, as the region other than Lebanon is down pretty drastically, honestly. You look at Cookeville there at 1-9, historically pretty good team, a playoff team, really struggling pretty much ever since Coach Maynard left from up there. You have to think that they may try to get back in the playoffs this year. Warren County a couple years ago had a really good year with a Division I athlete there. Look for them to try to stay in the playoffs. Shelbyville going through a coaching change there. I don't see any of these teams, Shelbyville, Coffee County, Warren County, Cookeville, really being in the same class as Lebanon.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is really Lebanon's region to take, barring a stumble somewhere. And I don't think that Chuck Gentry will let that happen. And so much is talked about their offense with Anthony Crowell, Jalen Abston. You know, their offensive line. They have some returning starters, a lot of senior presence on this team. But you know, let's talk about a Lebanon defense that is always tough. I think that this may be one of the more balanced teams in 6A. I really think that Lebanon has a really good shot of winning the games they need to win, and maybe winning a couple that maybe they get to the playoffs and win one or two that they shouldn't.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, that Riverdale game last year was just a total defensive effort from Lebanon, and that's what they're going to rely on some of these games when they get down toward the playoffs, because when they're going to face teams like Blackman and potentially Riverdale again and Oakland, you know, they're going to need that defense to really step up. But they've got some veteran leadership on both sides of the ball there that make them just a really dangerous team in 6A. So they're going to be an intriguing team to watch. It's going to be a fun team to watch because of their skill players.
Yeah, and they've got an interesting schedule. It's really going to see how they do down the line, because they go at Shelbyville, at Mount Juliet, and at Gallatin for 3 of their last 4 games before they finish it up Warren County. You know, I know that Shelbyville's going through some stuff, but that's a tough little run of a schedule there. And how they come out of that, if they can come out of that unscathed, they'll be on a roll going into the playoffs.
Yep, for sure. And
should avoid the big 3 there in the Rutherford County region in the first round with Blackman, Riverdale, and Oakland. All 3 should not be factored into that first round for Lebanon.
Well, what's funny you mentioned that, Cam, because let's go ahead and get into Region 4 because of those of those teams over there in Rutherford County and the way they shook out in 2021. Oakland, back-to-back state champions, unbeaten, again 15-0. Riverdale was 10-2 before 11 knocked them out. Rockville broke through, got to the playoffs for the first time, but unfortunately lost in a controversial ending to Shelbyville in that opening round game. Stewart's Creek lost 11 in round one as well. Blackman outside looking in last year after giving up 37 points a game. And
I believe Blackman returns to the playoffs this year. Offensively, they're just going to put up too many points to not make the playoffs, in my opinion. When you look at the Blaze, you look at Jack Risner there at quarterback, can sling it around. They have Justin Brown at wide out. Just a really solid team. They also have transfers from Ainsworth and Lipscomb Academy coming in at the receiver position. Ultimately, though, what it comes down to for Blackman is going to be run defense. That's where they struggled last year. Teams were gashing them left and right. You said, I believe, that they averaged giving up 37 points a game last year, but I bet they averaged over 30. They lost a lot of close games. They put up the points. They just couldn't find enough stops last year. Pretty senior-laden team this year. They find a way back in the playoffs. I believe the battle between them and Riverdale for the second spot, Oakland still king of the mountain as far as I'm concerned until somebody knocks them off. As Ric Flair said, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And that Oakland seems to be like Ric Flair. They're going to be around until they're 75 years old. Other than those three, Stewart's Creek, Rockville, maybe Sequel even sneaks back in there at that fourth spot again. But really like Oakland, what they have coming back as far as the offensive line. And as I said in the intro, they had a lot of talent last year, but they also had a lot of talent behind that talent. I've told you off the air, Chris, that if Eric Taylor wins Mr. Football for Oakland, they will repeat as state champs, and I feel 100% confidence in that. I look for him to have a breakout year, and I also look for Khalil James to have a good year for them also at running back.
Yeah, the one thing with Taylor, though, he is going to miss some time with a shoulder injury, and when they get him back, it's going to be really important because they don't want to miss a lot of time with him out of the lineup. He will be too valuable to that team to have him miss many games. But Riverdale's the one that I'm kind of back and forth on because on one hand, that defense is still going to be pretty good, but they did lose some pieces on that side of the ball. So is it going to be good enough to get them second place? When we talk about some of the key games in this region, and you look at that Blackman-Riverdale game right off the bat, September 2nd, that's a big game for a lot of people just because of where those two teams kind of fall in this discussion.
Well, I agree. I think Riverdale. I think their offense is talented. They have the Lipscomb transfer, Braden Graham, at quarterback, and they get Siegel transfer, Jalen Thompson at wide receiver, and of course Caleb Herring. Everything. But I think there's questions on the offensive line there. So can they buy time? Can they run the ball? But then you turn around and look at Blackman, and they've got the offensive talent to score on anybody. And they've had a year to get accustomed to Chandler Tigard's scheme. The question is, can they stop anybody? Can they run the ball, keep the clock running? Those are the big questions for Blackman. If they can, I think that they challenge that for that second spot. You get Jacob Page, Elijah Pitts, Justin Brown at wide receiver, Risner and Brown at quarterback, and the other quarterback. Thank you.
Yeah, and then Marshall at tight end. We can't forget him because he's a legitimate prospect too. And putting his hand in the ground this year, according to Tigers, is going to be one of the keys for that offense as well. They want him to be able to run block a little bit in that offense.
And to make their defense stronger, Tiger's going to actually move some of those offensive skill players to the defense in order to try to slow some things down, because he even recognizes that defense is going to be, a key to their success. Mm-hmm. I think when you get down to that fourth spot, you're really looking at Rockville and Stewart's Creek, and truthfully, whoever wins that game is going to have that fourth spot, in my opinion. Yeah. Rockville, new coach. Stewart's Creek, losing quite a few players. It's going to be interesting to see which team can come out on top there.
Yeah, I mean, we get down to that September 30th game, Oakland and Blackman. Depending on how that Riverdale game shakes out, I mean, that could be for the region title right there, or it could be Oakland Riverdale on the 14th. And the 14th is a big night for the entire region, just because I think that region's going to be shaking out 1 through 4 on that night. I don't think it gets to week 11.
That is a trap game there for Oakland. I'm not really sure if you could call it a trap game because Blackman's offense, as you said, Scott, can put up points on anybody. But that's a game that Oakland is not the same Oakland that they were last year or the year before. Oakland could lose a game this year, in my opinion, but still be there in Chattanooga.
Yeah, it'll be Blackman. Put up 36 points, I think.
Last year, the only team. They were the only team to put up more than 30 against Oakland, but Oakland scored 63 in that game.
Right.
So, yeah, there is that they're going to have to probably. Here's my thing on Blackman. 37 a game last year that they gave up. That number's got to get down to 29 at minimum. If you're still giving up 30 points a game, that's a bad sign. Bad sign. So, I mean, just to be able to say we don't give up 30 points a game, we give up less than that. That's a big point for your offense. I mean, if you can hold a team to 1 fewer touchdown a game, that's a big deal.
And that's going to be a tough task when you look at their schedule with Gallatin on the schedule and Summit on the schedule. That's going to be a tough task to keep that down.
Yeah, and they opened with Brentwood, and that game was a barn burner last year in week 1.
Yep.
So there's going to be some tests for Blackman, but I do think that they'll be in the mix there come October for potentially a region championship.
So basically what we're saying, folks, if you're free on a Friday night and you want to see some offense, go watch Blackman.
Pretty much guaranteed you're going to see points. That's the motto of this region, especially with the Blazing there, and their Blazing Fast motto. And they want to try to go faster than last year, and they think they can do it. So be interesting to see what Chandler Tigers bunch puts up in this region. But like you said, Cam, it's Oakland's region until somebody knocks them off.
Right.
On to Region 5, and a pretty good little mix right here of teams that have some questions to answer because of graduation of a lot of key players from 2021. Hendersonville won this region. Went up 10-4, went to the semifinals. Summit ended their year there. Hendersonville ended Beach's season in the quarterfinals a week earlier as the Buccaneers finished 9-4. Gallatin was 5-6 out in the first round. Clarksville knocked off Cane Ridge in the first round of the playoffs last season and kind of surprising people. And I think that if we're talking about any of these teams, Clarksville's the interesting one here because they've got a lot back.
Yeah, including their quarterback. Their quarterback was all last year. They had to use their previous running back as a quarterback last year and still made the playoffs and still won a game there. But, yeah, this is the one region that I look at, and I could see that one bad week by somebody, this thing's chaos. I mean, there's not one team, when you look at, region, when you look at Region 4 and you go, okay, Oakland should be here, Riverdale probably here. You look at this one and, it's not beyond the realm of possibility to see this thing be with Hendersonville, second or third.
Yep.
It just one bad week, just because, like you said, Chris, graduation has taken its toll in this region. And to Cam's point, also, coaching moves have taken a toll in this region.
Yeah, I believe the 4 teams that make the playoffs this year will be the same 4 teams. But we've talked about in other regions, it's really anyone's ball game in this region, in my opinion. Every team has what it takes to win the region, in my opinion. Gallatin is very much improved. Seen them a couple times this spring and this summer. Really like what they have with quarterback Zach Cook and Jaheim Merriweather, which Jaheim could play anywhere in the state regardless of classification. He's got several D1 offers, including an offer from the University of Michigan. You look at that September 16th game. I believe it is a spotlight game of the week for us.
It is.
Gallatin at Hendersonville. That one could decide the region, in my opinion. Beach losing the majority of their coaching staff. They're just such a big question mark. You can't doubt Coach Crabtree, but they lost a lot, and they were good assistants. So it'll be interesting to see how Beach starts the year off. Big test on September 2nd, first region week against Hendersonville. We'll find out there in week 3.
Yeah, I think that's going to be it being earlier in the season. I actually think that may benefit Beach. Hendersonville's got a quarterback coming up. We got their starter graduated last year, and they've got some things they got to put together. They've got sophomore quarterback Caleb Sams. The team just lacks experience. That'll come later on. That's why I think that this may be the year that Beach actually jumps up and takes this region again. I think that they put together a team. They've got talent in the right spots. They got a good quarterback. They got a couple actually, and Bronco Hanks back there on the defensive side. He's just a bellwether back there. They have talent and depth. But I'm like you, Cam. The one you got to watch for, the black horse in this one has got to be Gallatin. I think that's the team to watch for. If they don't win it, they could do it. They could be a wrecking ball in this region and just kind of throw things up. Jaheim Merriweather is a force, and I think that they are in much better position than they have been in the past. And Coach Watson really likes this team. And Clarksville, they get their quarterback back after injury. I think that they likely will be the 4th team, but don't be surprised if West Creek doesn't win a few games here and there and make it interesting. They have a new coach in Rob Gallowitz and 24 seniors returning. They are working on a new scheme, but they could win some games that maybe that we would have thought they shouldn't, and they could be a team to watch.
Yeah, when we look at this region, I mean, Hendersonville is going to go as junior Mason Baker goes for them, just a stud athlete for them. Beach, the coaching staff concerns is the question mark for them. Gallatin's biggest question mark is consistency on the offensive line. We've seen it at times in scrimmages where they looked really dominant running out of that wing tee, but we've also seen it at times where they struggle to keep the quarterback clean. So that's 3 of the top teams right there in that region, and they all 3 have question marks going into the season.
Yeah, it's one of these regions where legitimately you could see like a 3-way tie for first place because these teams beat up on each other. So Clarksville's a wild card, but if you trip up against Clarksville, you may not be at home in the first week of the playoffs. Let's take a break, and then we will come back with Region 6 and 7 on the other side. But first, we need to hear from our friends at Innovate Medical. And we are back getting into Region 6, where this region struggled in the first round of the playoffs last year, other than Overton, who made some waves there. No, they didn't fare too well against Region 5. Cane Ridge was 7-4, got knocked off by Clarksville. Smyrna. Overton was 3rd, McGavock 4th, and then Dixon County, Antioch, and Laverne outside looking in. Entering 2022, it seems like this might be a 3-horse race.
I agree. It's sort of like Region 5. All 3 teams that have a chance to win this region all have question marks. One team didn't really have a question mark until you broke the news to me a couple days ago, Scott, that Overton suffering from an injury here early on. I really liked Overton to win this region this year if it was not for that injury. Of course, Cane Ridge having the question of coming out of the gate early in ball games. If they can come out and play the way they did in the second half of a lot of games last year, you have to think that 7-4 record will improve. Smyrna led by Arian Carter, which is just a stud athlete that's got several Division I offers. You really like those three teams there at the top of Region 6, and then the other four are really battling out for one spot. Is McGavick, can they keep some consistency there and begin to build off of it, making the playoffs last year? But I really like this region. I like the experience in this region compared to Region 5, especially when it comes time for the playoffs this season.
I think this region has a lot to offer, and I still think that that this is Cane Ridge's region. I think they've got a lot of talent. 17 seniors returning, a lot of 3-year starters. Really, Coach Woods has been working on culture. That's been their mantra. He's really focused on the culture and not worrying about a lot of the outside stuff. He'll tell you last year they didn't, when it came down the stretch, they didn't pay attention to details. They played well. We've seen them in a couple of scrimmages. They played well against Oakland and Ensworth, but they've still got to maintain that focus. They're going to focus on trying to run the ball a little bit more than they have in the past, and they've got a good running back in really good running back in Reggie Goodlow Jr. They got a good receiver in Mose Phillips, and of course Shivan Abdullah, the quarterback. There's a lot of experience there, and I think this team is really, really poised to take the next step. I think, talking to Coach Woods, he wants his offense to be vanilla, but a spicy vanilla. So the biggest question to me is, can they shake off last year and not get down when things turn against them and stay up? Because if they don't, Smyrna is going to be sitting there right in the rear view window, ready to take advantage of it. I do agree with you. I think Arian Carter is a beast, and they also returned 4 offensive linemen and their starting quarterback Landon Miller. And they've got special teams. They got a really good kicker too.
Yeah.
But and I agree with you that Overton, you want excitement, turn on the juice. I mean, he is something special. So I think it's really a three-team race. I think that 4th spot, McGavick, I would say, has the inside lead with Demetrius Bell, Josh Martin. But do they have enough around them defensively to stop opposing offenses? I don't know. Yeah. But don't be surprised about Laverne. Laverne's got some special players.
While we're talking about this region, I just want to give a shout out to Coach Arnold there at Antioch. Antioch has been struggling in the last couple of years. He's done a really good job this year of getting more players out to play for the team as they improved their roster from 21 kids to 60. So a huge shout out to Coach Arnold, hopefully turning that Bears program around.
Yeah, and a couple of coaches, new coaches in Metro that we mentioned in another preview show, have had that kind of similar theme, like at Glencliff and Antioch and Stratford and McGavick, just getting more kids out there, getting the numbers up. That's kind of a big deal with those programs, considering that they've struggled with that here in the last decade. So yeah, it's a big deal for those kids.
I think it's a great sign that these coaches have been able to go out there and recruit. And I use recruiting in the terms of getting into the student body and getting their teams to sell the students into coming into the program and buying in. And that takes a special kind of commitment and a special kind of coach. And like you said, the coaches over at Glencliff, Maplewood, the coaches over at McGavick and all those, doing what they can to get those Metro students playing football. I think it's a special thing to see. I agree with you, Antioch. They've struggled, but I think that they're on their way of turning that program into something they can be proud of.
Yep. And we mentioned Overton, turning on the juice Majors, Delaney Majors. They're all everything weapon. Is going to miss some time with an knee injury that he suffered in the offseason. He is running at this point in the preseason, but when he will return is a big question mark right now. But if he does get back in time, at least for that Overton Cane Ridge game on October 7th, he could be the X factor in this region for sure. And that's one I've got circled.
Well, guys, looking at the key games here, October 7th, as you said, Chris, at Cane Ridge for Overton, and then October 28th, hosting Smyrna. So there's a very good chance that the juice is back for both those games. And if that's the case, Overton still has a shot to win this region, in my opinion.
And Ryder Hagen's a very good quarterback even without Juice in there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to find a way to get points on the board against other teams. And the schedule falls right for them to still contend even without Juice for however length of time he's out.
But you look at Chris, you look at the games that you've picked out as the key games, and there's a key in this, and they're just about 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the games you have McGavick.
Yep.
McGavick, they can do some damage to this region. I mean, if they win the right game, they can turn something up on its head.
And I have talked to several coaches who were saying, keep an eye on McGavick. They can be dangerous.
Yeah.
And, if it works out the way that we've all been talking, if those top three are pretty solid in Cane Ridge, Smyrna, and Overton, none of those three can afford to lose that game.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the thing is that, and again, I'm going to mention Laverne. They've got a quarterback over there, Javon Drake, that's being recruited by EKU, SEMO, and ETSU. They've got offensive linemen that's also being recruited. There's some talent in Laverne now that they're rebuilding that program, and I think Coach Woodward's got that one moving forward. So they could be dangerous coming down the stretch.
Yeah, it could be interesting to see that race for that number 4 spot. If McGavick does damage like people think they will, it may be McGavick in that 4 spot. But if they do slip, you're looking at Dixon County, possibly Laverne, and who knows, Antioch could make some big strides this year.
Yeah, what about Jeff Tomlinson leaving Montgomery Central and going to Dixon County? I mean, like I said, I think Cane Ridge is at the top of the list right now. But yeah, from there down, it could get real interesting really quick.
Yep. Cane Ridge and Smyrna have put on some very good games over the past couple of years, and I would expect nothing less from those two this year as well. And that September 30th game at Smyrna on the new turf there at Smyrna. It's another new theme. A lot of teams getting turf that are being laid down this year. So, and a lot of 6A schools. And we're going to hear a couple more of those here in just a second, because when we go to Region 7,
I was going to say,
nice segue. All Williamson County, all turf fields as Summit and Independence get new playing surfaces this year. Summit has to basically reload because you lose Destin and Keaton Wade and Brady Pierce and several other contributors from a 5A state champion 3 years ago and a runner-up the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think if you could sum up this region, competitive is going to be what you come up with, because the two of the most dreaded players in the region have graduated.
Yep.
And now everybody is focused on one. There's one that everybody's worrying about, and that is oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Parson.
Yeah, there you
Chris
go.
Parson, not Parsons. He took the S off of that and he put it on his chest.
That's it. Yeah, the running joke there was another media outlet had his name with an S in the end, and there's no S in the end, so he kindly corrected them.
No, that's right. But
guys, when I look at this region, I see Murderers Row. You're going to have a really good football team not make the playoffs out of this region. Of course, you mentioned Parson. I believe Ravenwood is a clear one in this region. But guys, Independence, in my opinion, is going to see a big jump this year. I think that they probably finished second in this region. And that game between Ravenwood and Independence is a must-see game, especially with that west side of the state, as I believe that matchup has a very high likelihood of happening twice in both October 28th and also in the quarterfinals if things end up the way that I believe they will.
Yeah.
Then you look at the rest of the the region. I mean, Brentwood, they have had a transfer come in from Ann Arbor. They have to find out who's going to start at quarterback for them. But they're historically a playoff team. And Summit, man, I want to play them early if I'm playing them because they still have talent. It's Williamson County, so they're going to reload with talent. But it's inexperienced talent this year for the Spartans. That October 7th game could be a trap game there for Independence. But the wild card in this region is Centennial.
Yep.
Can Centennial possibly getting them early? Could they possibly beat Summit on the 16th of September? And could Summit miss the playoffs? That's a real possibility in this region.
And that October 28th game is for a playoff spot between Centennial and Brentwood because the loser of that game is not making it.
Right.
In my opinion. I mean, unless Brentwood does knock off one of Independence or Ravenwood. Now, listen, Brentwood Ravenwood is a really good game every year, so they could wind up beating Ravenwood in the regular season and throw this whole thing into chaos.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Ravenwood is not unbeatable. I mean, they could stumble. Go to media day and listen to Chris Parson talk. He is laser focused, and I think that Ravenwood team, they're going to go as he goes. And he this year he's had a year in the system. Coach Hester said that he knows where everybody is on the field and where they should be at any given time. I mean, he is that good of a quarterback. But it's not a one-man game, and there are opportunities, and they can't afford to slip up because I agree with you, Cam. I think Independence and Scott Stidham's team is just sitting there waiting. I don't know that there's a more loaded team from top to bottom out there than Independence right now. Ty Lockwood, Trey Hartwell, Cody. I'm going to butcher that. Help me, Chris.
Cody
Package.
Package. Thank you. I didn't want to butcher that. Steel Katina. I mean, top to bottom, this team has got the ability to win this region, and Ravenwood can't afford to let their foot off the gas. I fully expect that October 28th game, all things being considered, to be for the region championship. But I also think that Brentwood is not going to be. They've got a lot of seniors. They do have a quarterback situation they've got to straighten out. But I think Adam Fontecha is going to end up being the quarterback there. He's a very talented safety. There's a lot of seniors on that. Their offensive and defensive lines are strong. I expect Brentwood to be in that third spot, and I think that it's going to come down to, I agree, between Summit and Centennial for that fourth spot. And it's just hard for me to see it. It's really going to be a tough one because both of those teams, I think Centennial has the personnel to win that game. And I think that, Brian Coleman, he is always a tough out. So it's, I think that team, they've had guys back there backing up the Wade guys. And, I just don't know that the player that they don't miss is Brady Pierce.
Yeah, because he did a little bit of everything for Summit. And when you have to replace a player at 3, even 4 positions, that's very difficult. The one thing I will say about Region 7 is because they match up with Memphis, and Memphis is still reeling from missing an entire season 2020, they're not going to be back for another 2 years before they're back being really competitive again. I see all 4 teams that get into the playoffs in Region 7 at least getting to the second round. I see a sweep there.
I'm going to say no, just because of the inconsistencies that loom for Summit or Centennial, and I believe that Houston County team out of Memphis can be really good this coming up season.
Interesting. We'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Well, you look at. I just want to mention on Centennial because they've got. They pretty much have overhauled. They've got new coordinators. They've got a dual threat quarterback back there. It's tough. They've got a experienced lineman. I don't know that. I mean, they could up and get that third spot if everything goes right. I don't want to discount them saying that they're just in fourth. I mean, they're a really good team, and I as far as Franklin goes, I think they're on their way, but I still think they're a couple of years out for Alex Milton and his crew.
Yeah, they just lost way too much the last couple of years to be really considered
Yeah,
in the
well,
running at this point.
yeah, they're just incredibly young. They're just incredibly young. Give them 2-3 years, and they're probably competing.
Mhm.
It's going to be interesting to see what the fall, where this region looks in 2-3 years.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, when they reclassify after this season, who knows?
Right.
Guess a couple of these teams, man, we may be seeing another team or two added to this mix in Williamson County.
And guys, looking at that October 28th matchups there with Centennial and Brentwood, Ravenwood at Independence, when you look at those two compared with all the other key games we have that are on the 28th of October, if any of our viewers would like to donate a helicopter for us to be able to cover more games, we would very much appreciate that.
Tribute to the legend Rudy Kalis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Copper for Channel 4 for all these years, and I don't know who's going up in the helicopter. That's what I want to know.
I've done it before.
Okay, Cam.
Okay, Cam, you got it.
You volunteered, so we're all good there.
Yeah, you and Chopper Dave.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, 6A. It's just a brand of football that you don't see in a lot of places. It's very good football all the way around, and a lot of exciting games on the schedule for this year. Really, really ready to get going. Not too much longer now. Guys, final thoughts about 6A before we head out.
Still Oakland's to lose. They have to replace a little bit. But when you have the best coach in the state, regardless of classification, it's tough to beat Coach Kevin Creasy, and it's really tough to win that game at Oakland, as they have a huge winning streak there at home at Ray Hughes Stadium in Murfreesboro. I believe it's up like 53 games or something like that since Coach Creasy has been over there. Maryville, I know they're not in our area demographic, but guys, they're good. Last year's game with Oakland was 24-14. That's the team that if somebody knocks Oakland off before Chattanooga, that's the team that's going to do it. And then Ravenwood. We talked about how they go as Chris Parson goes. Number one, can they be consistent enough to make it to Chattanooga? And then do they have enough to get over the hump once they get there?
If there's one thing that I've heard consistently from coaches this offseason, it's how you deal with adversity. And a lot of those teams, I think you're looking at, we look at it and we say Oakland, Maryville, probably your top. And beyond that, it's carnage. I mean, it really, there could be a new team rise up on the west side of things. And I think that it's going to come down to teams that can weather the storm, that can deal with adversity, maybe overcome injuries. But in the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised to see a team on that side of the bracket, give somebody a really good game and possibly win this whole thing.
Yeah, and you talked about a team coming out of nowhere. If there is a team that comes out of nowhere on either side, east or west, I'm going to go ahead and peg that team. That team will be the Independence Eagles.
All right.
Bold words.
A couple of questions I have can teams like Gallatin or Overton or Cane Ridge make some noise in that bracket this year and potentially, get a little bit deeper run? And do not sleep on Lebanon. They are the most dangerous team outside of Oakland and Ravenwood, I think, in 6A. Probably even not as much as Maryville, but you even slip for a second and they'll get you. So I think Lebanon makes a ton of noise and at least gets to the quarterfinals, and we'll see.
It's going to be a fun year.
Yeah. One issue with that, though, Chris, is they would have to go to Ray Hughes Stadium. And then you mentioned Gallatin. Gallatin has the talent. They got a sophomore offensive tackle that's about, already starting to get small D1 offers that's going to blow up, in my opinion. And then they have Jaheim Merriweather, one of the most talented players in the state. They're a team that if they get hot at the right time, they could make a semifinal run.
Yeah, you talk about that long winning streak for Oakland at home. Yeah, it's been a great run for them, but it will end at some point. And if a team's going to do it, I think Lebanon has a better chance than Maryville does. I'm going to call it right now. I think Lebanon has a better chance than Maryville does of winning at Oakland if they have to get there in the playoffs. But I still think it's Oakland's to lose. So
you got to love the both statements here on 615 Preps.
I agree. I actually agree with that. I think if Oakland stumbles, it won't be the Maryville game because they'll be up for that. I think if Oakland stumbles, it'll be one of the games that they're expected to win earlier in the playoffs. If they get that Maryville game, then I think that I'm not saying that Maryville won't win, but I don't think I think that they will be up for that one because they've been there before and their kids know what it takes to win there.
And these aren't our official picks yet. We'll have those out before Thursday, week 1. So stay tuned for those at 615preps.com. Shameless plug there. But yeah, we're good at that here. We're good at that.
We're definitely shameless.
Yeah, that's the truth too, Scott. So that's it for us for our Class 6A preview for the Midstate 48, powered by Miracle Auto Group. I want to thank them. I want to thank Innovate Medical as well for sponsoring the shows this season. For Cameron Reed, for Scott Burton, I'm Chris Brooks. We will see you next time. Division 2 is the final preseason preview show we have to come before things really get going. So make sure that you like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure that you listen wherever you get your podcasts, 615preps.com. Follow us on social media, the whole 9 yards, because there's a lot more coverage coming your way. And for all of us at 615 Preps, have a good one.